Greetings everyone, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, and I'm here to bring you my first review for Season 6 of The Loud House. With a brand new opening sequence and featuring a little bit more of myself, I hope you all enjoy the new format as I bring you the latest reviews of the latest episodes from the latest seasons. Anyway, the first episode being reviewed today is not the official premiere episode for the new season. It's actually the first of two installments from the double episode production of 602 A and B. Why Nickelodeon would skip over 601 A and B and go straight to 602, I don't understand, but be that as it may, today's episode is titled, Don't Escar-go. As usual, first we'll discuss the plot, and then my thoughts and critiques with my final score. So, let's get right into the first review for Season 6 of The Loud House. In this episode, Clyde is given the opportunity to possibly attend a prestigious cooking school in France. After his friends' attempts to have him learn from other chefs in town don't work out, they try to sabotage Clyde's meal he plans to make for the dean of the academy, which they ultimately try to undo after the dean praises Clyde on his talents. However, Clyde decides he's not going to attend the French cooking school and chooses to remain local by having virtual classes with Dean Dupont, and he's joined by some other chefs who could definitely learn a thing or two themselves. Well, that concludes the plot of the episode, so now we come to my thoughts and critiques. I seriously thought this was going to be an episode where they were going to change up the status quo and have Clyde leave for a while, if not maybe forever. But then I remembered this was only going to be a 10-minute episode, and given how Clyde has been one of the biggest recurring characters on the show, not giving him a proper 20-minute send-off would have been a huge insult. I thought Clyde would leave and then someone else would take his spot for a while. Like maybe a returning Ronnie Ann. After all, the cancellation of the Casa Grandes was announced a short time before this Loud House episode aired, and it was reported that the spin-off characters would make appearances in newer episodes of the Loud House, but I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, so let's get back on track with the review of this episode. At the time of this recording, I'm strongly considering this to be Clyde's best episode, possibly dethroning Brave the Last Dance from Season 4. I know the other kids played a significant role in the story, and this would technically count as a Lincoln and Friends episode more than anything, but in terms of developing Clyde's character on what defines him the most, he has more of a leading role than anyone else. This episode pretty much confirms what makes his character stand out, and that would be him being a chef and having an interest in food preparation. And there have been so many past instances that would validate that conviction, like Fam Scam, Brave the Last Dance, Tough Cookies, One Flew Over the Loud House, Argue for Real, and even the Loud House movie, just to name a few. He knows exactly what everyone likes to eat, even making special dishes to accommodate his friends, and when you tie all that together with the dean honoring him with a toast on the bright future he's going to have, it just makes you appreciate Clyde's character in more ways than what was originally possible. This episode also has a callback to the episode Schooled, where Liam says someone moving away is happening again, referring to the time Lincoln temporarily moved to Canada, and how Stella reminds everyone that they need to stick together. You can say the kids in this episode didn't really learn their lesson from Schooled, the episode where they came to accept the fact things were going to be different and they had to start embracing changes. However, despite how Clyde was planning on having virtual chats with everyone so they could stay in touch, I can see why Lincoln and his friends didn't want Clyde to leave and tried to ruin his dinner plans as their last-ditch effort. Clyde would be living in another country, and the dean said it would open the door to learning more about cooking in other places like Britain, and maybe the possibility of being physically close friends would be gone forever. Considering the deep friendship that is Clinkin McLeod, I too would be apprehensive about losing a lifelong friend who has always been there for me since the beginning. As a quick side note, I actually liked how Clyde's dads were not going crazy about the idea of their son going to France, assuming he was going there alone while they stayed behind in Royal Woods. Either that or the entire family was going to move to France together. But at face value, it seems as though the lesson of Howard and Harold learning to let go from Runaway McBride actually stuck, for now. At least Lincoln and his friends weren't selfishly sabotaging Clyde, at least not immediately from the get-go, when they wanted him to perfect his craft more locally with cooking experts they already knew, and they didn't try to painfully guilt Clyde into giving up the opportunity of a lifetime. That would have greatly brought the episode down in my book. Clyde was just as apprehensive about going to the academy, so he did have some second thoughts on his own dreams. He was keeping his options open, an important part to the story story and Clyde's character development, which I'll bring up again in just a little bit. Anyway, he was willing to try to learn the art of French cooking from Lincoln's dad and Chef Pat, and it didn't quite work out the way one would expect when all their food preparations turned disastrous. Well, that's what you get when you try to take instructions from a guy frantically running around during the lunch rush at his restaurant, and someone who seems to not understand math, which makes you question Pat's cooking skills since you need math in order to make food. Now I can see why she had to settle for working in a middle school cafeteria. So the kids tried to screw up all of Clyde's food during his dinner with Dean Dupont, and I guess the saving grace was how all their attempts conveniently backfired, and their friend was able to impress the dean. That was a more respectable approach than taking the obvious path of having Dupont eat food that she thought Clyde ruined, with Clyde questioning what could have gone wrong and planting doubt in his mind about how good he really was. The kids nearly pulled off their sabotage when it came time for the final course, but they were overcome with guilt after the dean praised Clyde's work and talked up his dreams, and they tried to get rid of the food they intentionally ruined and literally made a mess in the process. They apologized for what they did, and in turn, Clyde made a shocking announcement, something I would consider one of his best character moments. Now, whether he was indirectly guilted by his friends or that he genuinely felt strongly about what he was about to say, Clyde reached a conclusion similar to that of Luann from Feast or Family, where cooking might not be something he wants to do full-time in the future. Besides saying how tough and extensive the learning curriculum might be, he said he didn't like the idea of having his future planned out and didn't know if he would change his mind later on. He lays out other possibilities on what he might want to do when he grows up. It's sort of like Lynn Loud Sr. and him having skills for both his lifelong passion for cooking and having prior experience in the field of information technology. For someone at Clyde's age, that's a really smart and mature thing to consider, seeing how he's keeping his options open. It shows that as a kid, he still has all the time in the world to decide what he wants to be when he's an adult, and that there's no need to rush into something he may like now, but maybe not so much when he gets older. In the meantime, it would appear Clyde will continue to perfect his cooking from Royal Woods, and wherever he may end up in the future, the Action News team will always be there for him and each other. Now, before I give my final thoughts on the episode, let's get a second opinion from another Loud House fan. Back with me once again to give his thoughts on Don't Escar-go, please give a warm welcome to someone who also makes reviews of the Loud House, and someone with whom I've collaborated with on several of his videos. Ladies and gentlemen, the Loud House Critic. Take it away, good sir.
Hey everybody, recognize me? One guy with 1,000 views on all the episodes I must review. So now about this episode, Don't Escar-go, there's a lot of things that's really surprised me and there were a few things that disappoint me. So I know that this is a Clyde McBride episode, and the story happens to do with some of his best cooking, as he usually is the best cook for a middle schooler. But once opportunity actually gets to Clyde about him taking his culinary skills into France, his friends start to worry and they try to figure out so many different ways for him to actually do his cooking skills right here in Royal Woods, Michigan. I really did like seeing the interaction with Clyde and Lynn Sr., and even his interaction with Pat from This the Cook. For the most part, these are actually some of the best highlight parts I actually enjoyed in this episode. That was until when all else fails, this famous dean from France actually comes to Royal Woods and gives Clyde the actual opportunity to actually go to school somewhere in France, or Paris for that matter, as bad as I hate getting a call back from the episode Schooled. But this time, Lincoln and the Freckle gang actually try to sabotage his Claude's family dinner so that way he'll everything up, and that makes him not actually want to go to France and makes him stay in Royal Woods, Michigan. And I think Lincoln and his Freckle gang buddies were too stupid and too selfish, and that kind of made them unlikable, but not as too unlikable as Lynn was in Sitting Bull, or better yet, Lenny actually ruining Lori's college scholarship in Don't You Forget Me. This scene really got me angry, and what even hurts it is actually that Stella would have been the voice of reason of the group, but nope, just like in Grub Snuff, she actually goes along with this. But am I really calling this a bad episode? Of course not. It just didn't pique so much my interest. I was waiting for so many of the other characters to actually move on, as Lori did when she was going to college and Schooled. Again, that should have been a Lori episode. But at the very least, at least Clyde actually did admit that somehow he didn't want to go to French because he has this kind of phobia of mountains or whatever the he said in this episode. And so he actually takes this class online, which is actually pretty interesting, and it kind of actually saves the episode, but didn't save it too much, as so much beginning season 6. I would have loved it if they were actually premiered the actual season 6 with Present Danger, which I have no idea of why they didn't even premiere that episode. Instead, they had to premiere this one. So this season premiere actually started okie dokie is what I can actually say. So really, we're kind of on a good start of season 6, but I wonder how they'll actually end this season or how they'll actually end the show. Because honestly, nothing can last forever. Just look at how the way the Simpsons are doing. So I would just say this episode I would put in the okay section. It gets really good from the beginning until the end, but at the end of the second half of this episode, it gets a tedious of how the way Lincoln and his freckle buddies were actually sabotaging Clyde's dinner. The reason why it worked in school because Lincoln did his own stupid kind of decision of talking his dumb principal into actually getting into a different class to be with his friends. And she was stupid enough to actually send him to Canada, which somehow he didn't feel too much comfortable there. And somewhat, I don't even blame him. Well, maybe I kind of do, since he put himself in that situation. But what they did in this episode was totally gonna be food poisoning to everybody. And I get that Clyde is actually their closest friend. Matter of fact, Lincoln's closest friend. But somewhat you can't stop your friend from actually growing up. They have a choice, and the decision would be theirs to make whenever they want to go somewhere, whether they want to go to a different school or actually explore somewhere else. Again, like I said, and don't you forget me, Lori may have gone off to college, but at least you can still have phone chats with her. There's no reason to go out of your way and actually ruining her scholarship into her not going to college. But I think I'm actually going to save the rest of my results until I actually review this episode myself. Because I like to put more detail into this, but I'm going to save it until I review this episode. Well, thanks for having me guest star on here, SteamTeamRedubUK. It was real thoughtful for you to actually bring me back onto one of your Loud House reviews.
Very well said, Mr. Critic, and I appreciate you accepting my invitation to make an appearance on this review. You're certainly welcome to come back for more guest spots in the future, and I'll be looking forward to more of our future collabs on your videos as well. Anyway, now it's time for my final thoughts. Overall, this was a pretty good first start to the beginning of the new season, and Clyde was the best character of the episode when it came to defining his talent as a chef. It also showed how he doesn't want to have a one-track career so early in his life, and he wants to see where the future takes him should he ever give up on cooking and wish to pursue something else. His friends may have had their selfish moments on not wanting Clyde to leave, but their actions were not as painfully excessive as they were in episodes like Grub Snub. They just didn't want to lose Clyde as a friend, and I can understand why they wanted to keep him a little closer to home. Hopefully, as the season moves on, everyone becomes a little bit more open to change like Clyde after his little predictability breakdown, and that the status quo on this lesson doesn't have to keep resetting itself for plot convenience, but we'll just have to wait it out and see what happens. With that said, I give Don't Escar-go an 8 out of 10. Well folks, that concludes my review of Don't Escar-go. I will end this review with 2 things worth noting. First, does anyone else get the feeling Nana Gale and Seymour are now in a relationship? They were seen together a lot throughout the episode, and it strongly indicates Clyde may have gotten a new grandfather, the same way Lincoln got a new grandmother after his Pop-Pop and Myrtle started going steady. And 2, we find out Chef Pat has a niece known as Waffles. I have no idea what makes this girl act like a wild animal and why it is she needs the namesake food to calm her down, but now I can add questionable family genetics to Pat's inability to use math in cooking. There's always something new to learn about characters, and sometimes they are the things you would have been better off not knowing. So, as far as this episode goes, what did you guys think of it? Love it? Hate it? Something you would add? Change? Keep it as it is? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to this channel for the latest Loud House content. That's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys for the next video, but until then, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, signing off. Peace out, home slices.